Hello, everybody. The days just get better and better. This is quite an insane time to be alive. And I want to thank you all for being here. Thank you as well to all the people in chat. Sean Donnelly, TND Tesla, Sir Winston, Andy, as always, HBLW, and Renato, where you are, I think. We're going to talk about Bitcoin heavily today, but also talk about the stuff that's sucking it all up. It is out of control. Literally out of control. We will be running out of Bitcoin. And this is before any big Bitcoin treasury that's actually hitting it all. We have treasuries all over the world stacking. MicroStrategy, Semler, Metaplanet, Marathon now. Another $500 million coming. And the future is insane. This is the treasury asset of the digital age. And as I have said many times already, that retail is not a factor. I even mentioned it yesterday's video because there's a question on it. This is a treasury game. And now, those that can't buy Bitcoin, they're buying companies that have Bitcoin as a treasury asset. You can't make this stuff up. It's insane. We're going to break it all down and show you the future is very bright. Thank you. And sorry, my voice is back today. Thank goodness. And disclaimer, not financial advice. And shout out to everybody on Patreon as well. Let me see. Thanks so much for all your brilliant content. I want to become a Patreon member now. Thank you, T. Jalling, Bergsama 6754. I hope there are some seats open, but always check back if there aren't. Let's get into the fear and greed first of all. Fear and greed is 83, extreme greed, and it was 90 yesterday. So things are kicking off, but it's still early. Let's watch some of the money flow. This is from CoinShares. Digital assets reached $2.2 billion last week, $34 billion year to date into these assets, and assets under management hitting $140 billion. It's crazy. Bitcoin, another $1.5 billion week, but that is nothing compared to the buys that are happening as well. Absolutely nothing. This is why it's a treasury game. I'll explain in a few minutes. And Bitcoin, that's the $1.5 billion last week. Again, not bad. Even other things are up too, but we'll talk about them later. I do promise a Solana only video coming real soon. There's crazy stuff happening there too. But let's get into the Bitcoin stuff. For the purists out there, why I have stressed since 2017. Anybody knows me? I was one of those guys that kept on talking about Bitcoin, driving people crazy, where I'd walk into a room, people would probably leave. He's like, oh, he's going to talk about Bitcoin again. I was that meme. But here we are. This is from the Bitcoin historian. For the first time ever, one Bitcoin is now worth more than the average US retirement savings account. Sell your IRA if you don't have access or exposure to Bitcoin, buy Bitcoin. It is a game-changing asset. This is the reason I started making videos. Stumbled into it by accident, by the way. Let's get into the prophecy. The prophecy is coming true, ladies and gentlemen, and that was treasuries are the name of the game for Bitcoin. Now, the top 13 holders own 28% of all Bitcoin, and Bitcoin has become the treasury game. It's no longer a retail game, has not been for years, and congratulations. Now you are front-running all the billionaires and the Wall Streeters and TradFi and all that good stuff. That's why we do this. Let's get into another thing as well. I tweeted this over the weekend. I predicted a big smash buy from MicroStrategy. And I said, again, I got it wrong. I said they could reach a 300,000 Bitcoin bag. And it was up in pre-market. I was wrong. As usual, I sandbag. People are now complaining about me sandbagging. But I don't want you ever to be disappointed. So I just like to sandbag a little bit. They didn't get to 300,000. They get to 331,000 Bitcoin. It is the biggest monster buy ever in the history of Bitcoin, not only in terms of the number of Bitcoin, but also the dollar value, over $7 billion. And they spent $2.1 billion 10 days ago to buy another 27,000 Bitcoin. The Bitcoin yield is 40. I'll explain that in a little bit while because that confuses people. This is insane. All right. This company is insane. I've been watching it since August 2020. I'm going to break down all the numbers pertaining to this and the Infinite Money Glitch Part 2 and all the other players that are now jumping into the Infinite Money Glitch 2. It is absolutely bonkers. Shout out to Dylan and Claire, first of all, though. He actually is working with a company called Metaplanet, which we'll talk about in a minute too. MicroStrategy just bought a German fumble worth of Bitcoin last week. My brain is so scattered. I'm merging my words together. So next time I say the word jumble, I mean German fumble. Because Germany sold 50,000 Bitcoin. And I know it was a county and whatever. It wasn't Germany per se. But anyhow, it's crazy. Now I can't catch up with the comments there. And let me see. Hardcore for life. Yes. Hardcore investors here in this audience. But let's get back to the story. A lot more to talk about. A few days ago, this is a post from one of my slides a few days ago, that Saylor bought another 27,200 Bitcoin for $2 billion. And now they have 280,000 Bitcoin. That is 10 days ago. 10 days ago. And then after the Monster Buy over the last couple of days, you can see here, this is what he means by the green button. Another 52,000 Bitcoin. Now, they used, breaking it all down, so far they've used, let me guess, over 7 billion of their planned 10 billion in ATM program. That is the share issuance. And they have, no, let me get this, get all the numbers. There's so many numbers. About 7 billion of the 21 billion ATM program. So they have approximately, I guess, 14 billion left to spend. But that was over 3 years. They've already spent a huge amount of their 10 billion allocation, like 70% of it, just in 10 days since the plan. And one of the things that I have learned about Michael Saylor over the years, what he says he will do, he does. Like, you can take him literally to the bank. And by the way, I'll stress again, as I have done for many years, don't overthink MicroStrategy, all right? It's going to go up. It sells shares to buy Bitcoin, which drives the price of Bitcoin up. Therefore, the price of the shares go up because all they hold is Bitcoin. All right? Don't overthink it, everybody. This is a problem. People get bogged down. Hedge funds get bogged down. They overthink it. A lot of people still don't have access to Bitcoin. Therefore, they buy MicroStrategy. That becomes their treasury. And they're at, so far, a 41.8% yield on Bitcoin, on their shares, year to date, which is crazy. You get 41.8% more Bitcoin per share than you did at the beginning of the year. Now, there's other stuff happening too, which is kind of beginning of the game theory story. There's a cool chart. Shout out as well to Sanjay for getting it to me this morning. These are the biggest treasury holders on the planet. Apple, $157 billion worth of cash. Melting ice cubes, ladies and gentlemen. Google, 93 billion. Amazon, 88 billion. Microsoft, nearly 80 billion. Meta, 70 billion. GE, 55 billion, etc. But look at the bottom of the list. ExxonMobil, 27 billion. Now you've got MicroStrategy that have nearly 27 billion of Bitcoin. Bitcoin does a little spike. They're at 27 billion. These are the biggest treasury holders on the planet. MicroStrategy has just penetrated this list of the biggest companies on the world. On the world, whatever. Again, it's going to go a lot higher. There'll come a day where the companies like Microsoft, by the way, Microsoft had that vote out to their shareholders, should they buy Bitcoin. After everything that's happened, they're probably going to say no. But then they're going to say, that was the dumbest thing we ever did. It's like, that town in Germany selling the Bitcoin. It's just, you have to get in early. And you've heard me say this 1,000 times too. It's like, till I'm blue in the face. It's game theory. First mover wins most. That's a new one, by the way. But all these other companies now are now looking at this little piddly MicroStrategy that came out of obscurity, running up their list. Soon it will have more treasuries, probably, than United Health Group, Ford Motor Company, etc. It is crazy. And that will get the attention of the other companies. Now, there are smart other companies already moving, but they're coming. We'll get to those in a second too. So let's get to it. First of all, Michael Saylor was on the PBD podcast, Patrick Bet David, and it was a great conversation. And Saylor basically said on Bitcoin, every Bitcoin you don't buy is going to be worth $13 million, my friend. But again, he said that with such absolute conviction. It's like almost smacking Patrick Bet David in the face saying, get some. It's that simple. And yesterday, this was a slide from the Q&A deck I put together yesterday. Retail versus MicroStrategy. I talked about the 42 billion ATM. And the average retail Bitcoin buy is $91. And one little company called MicroStrategy is planning to spend $42 billion in 3 years on Bitcoin. That is worth about 461 million retail investors, which doesn't even exist because there's only 53 million wallets on Bitcoin. Anyway, and half of our things have less than $8,000 in net worth. So that is just crazy mathematics. But today, okay, that was yesterday. I knew they'd buy some. I didn't expect them to buy such a big bag. Okay, it's a crazy amount of Bitcoin in a short window of time. But MicroStrategy over the last 10 days have bought 78,980 Bitcoin in just 10 days. That's 176 days of issuance by the miners. And remember, miners are hodling. I'll get to those in a minute too. And remember as well, from all my studies and research into Bitcoin since 2017, there will never be more than 14 million Bitcoin because so much of it is lost. Okay? People don't take their OPSEC seriously. And when you calculate 14 million Bitcoin ever, Saylor now owns MicroStrategy 2.366% of all the Bitcoin that'll ever exist. And over time, more will be lost. In fact, this was the conversation we had with Michael Saylor when he was on my channel last. I spoke about how you're going to get to 1% Bitcoin, aren't you? There's never going to be more than 14 million. Well, he has completely smoked that number too. Again, it's a numbers game. Bitcoin is hard. It's scarce. That's why I find it fascinating. And Saylor as well, a reminder, he did say this strategy of issuing shares, debt, etc., is infinitely scalable. And after he does the 42 billion, by the way, he's very quickly nearly through a lot of that already. I don't see how we could have a problem raising another 100 billion after that, and then another 200 billion after that. Again, this is the infinite money glitch. Wash, rinse, repeat. Not hard, everybody. Not hard. And this is kind of crazy, this number here. So far, just in 10 days, of the 42 billion, of which 21 billion is ATM, i.e. issuing shares to buy Bitcoin, they are now 66% of the way through the 10 billion of ATM target for 2025, blown in 10 days. So I think that 21 billion ATM plus 21 billion of debt will be blown through probably by the end of next year. 42 billion buys coming. That is enough to consume all of the Bitcoin supply issued over the next 20 months or so. Crazy. Let's look at the chart. And let's try to explain why this is my biggest position by accident, of course. And I entered with options. So it is bonkers. The gain, since I started playing with this thing, is now up. Just the stock, 2,420%. Again, bonkers. The price of MicroStrategy as I speak right now is, holy crap, $377. It was at $330 yesterday. Again, as I say, everybody, don't overthink this. All right? And we'll get to why selling too soon is very dangerous as well. Now, if that wasn't enough, there's more. There's a lot more. And sorry, I'm very heavily caffeinated today. Marathon Mining. You know what they're doing? They're issuing $700 million in a private offering of senior convertible notes due in 2030. And they are going to be buying Bitcoin. Another player. Stacking. Now, the marathon chart is... This is the MicroStrategy chart. This is the marathon chart. It's kind of ugly. You can see here, this is since beginning of year to date. And it's actually down. Marathon stock is down year to date. The chart sucks. But they're hoping maybe following the MicroStrategy playbook will help them beef up their stock price. And I think it will. Again, issue debt or shares to buy Bitcoin, sucks Bitcoin from the market, makes it harder, it goes up. That's it. That's the infinite money glitch we've been talking about for years. Also, Semler Scientific, I think they're in California, if I'm not mistaken. They just raised $21 million at the money as well. They're issuing shares, and they bought 215 Bitcoin. Okay, that's half amount of daily issuance. They now hold 1,273 Bitcoin with the Bitcoin yield of 37.3. By the way, that's compared to the 41.5% Bitcoin yield from MicroStrategy so far. They're catching up, issuing shares, but it's a much smaller company. But remember, what happens when there's more? Let's check out the SMLR chart. And I remember I did a Patreon post. The minute that they bought Bitcoin, I said, I'd buy this, only there's no options on it, and I don't trade equities, so kicking myself. I should have just plonked down some money and bought some shares. Anyhow, this is the chart since they started buying Bitcoin. Up very, very nicely as well. And as usual, there's more. The Metaplanet. Shout out to Dylan and Claire. This is Japan's Metaplanet. My little flag emoji didn't come through. They just issued another $11.8 million in bonds to guess what? Guess what, everybody? Answers on a postcard. Only kidding. To buy Bitcoin, of course. And their chart is, again, it's been a volatile ride, but holy wow. Since they started, it's been up and to the right. Massive spike. And then a little dip and back up again. But the trend is still beautifully up for Metaplanet again. Like literally, it's like shooting fish in a barrel. You can't miss. You can't go wrong. And I would never harm a fish. Don't worry, everybody. It's a figure of speech. And in summary, I'm just going to summarize this morning. Okay? This morning. MicroStrategy buys 52,000 Bitcoin for 4.6 billion. Marathon announced 700 million to buy Bitcoin. Semler raised 21 million ATM, and they buy 215 Bitcoin. And Metaplanet issue 1.75 billion debt in yen, about $11.5 million, to buy more Bitcoin. That is today. The Treasury race is beyond on fire. It's nuts. Everybody's trying to get into this thing before it runs out. And it will run out. What happens if the US government decides to spend $10 billion a year on Bitcoin, following the El Salvadors and all the other nation states around the world that were smart enough to get in early? And shout out to them all as well. The Ghana Republic in Africa, or AEC, or whatever it's called. You've got Bhutan with a $1.1 billion bag. El Salvador, $500 million bag. We haven't even scratched the surface of this treasury race. And I don't care if you're a government treasury, if you're a corporate treasury, if you're a plumber in San Francisco, a friend of mine, 4 employees, they've been stacking Bitcoin for 3 years now. Because I told them to when they were working with us, working side by side. I said, do you have any cash left over in your business? Yeah. How much? Oh, about 100 grand. Buy Bitcoin. Don't sell it. And here they are. Now, Tether as well. Mints $1 billion. You know the old story from Ivan on tech. When Tether mints, buy. Another $1 billion is coming in to the system to buy, guess what? Bitcoin and crypto. That's just how it works. But now we've got Poland watching all of this happening. Everybody now heard the story of the US potentially buying Bitcoin as a treasury asset. And now Poland, shout out to Bitcoin Archive, Archie, Polish presidential candidate Sławomir Mencen wants to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve if he wins. And I just want to point out one thing, though. Check out the guy. He's very, very young, okay? The young people get it. Those under 40, I don't know how old this guy is. But everybody wants to change. Everybody wants to shake things up. This is how you do it. Sounds like a song. This is how you do it. Now, there's one other thing that was not on my bingo card. In full disclosure, I tried to think of all angles, all possibilities, but I did not see this one coming at all. Shout out to Sanjay as well. Chinese electrical vehicle maker company Kaijin, which I never even heard of, is buying a Bitcoin mining company in the Middle East, and it's a big one. What? So you got Bitcoin miners issuing debt, issuing shares to buy Bitcoin, and they're mining Bitcoin. Now you got electric car companies buying Bitcoin miners in the Middle East. I hope you all get the picture now. It's crazy. And if it couldn't get better, well, it's just about to. From Eric Balchunas, Blackrock IBIT options are launching tomorrow. NASDAQ is ready to go. And that will bring a lot more money and liquidity and institutions into the Bitcoin space, because then they can better manage their risk and exposure. That's it. And that will also help money flow into IBIT, which will help them take more Bitcoin off the market, making it even more scarce. This 2024 has been way beyond my wildest expectations. Everything is happening sooner than I expected. I expected some of this stuff to go down in 2025, but no, it's completely changing. And shout out to Bernstein as well. This is an interesting quote. They said, "Intrigue will turn to pain for the Bitcoin bears, and of course, that's those that don't hold Bitcoin." And that's the $725 billion Bernstein predicts Bitcoin will hit 200,000 by 2025. By the way, Michael Saylor believes on that Patrick Bet-David will get to 100,000 this year pretty easily. Bitcoin's at 91,500, so it's only a stone's throw away from where it needs to go. And $381 is what MicroStrategy is now, okay? If I told you my cost basis, you'd laugh. Anyway, crazy time to be alive. We're all excited. A couple of months ago, we hit the threshold of over 1,000 millionaires in the Patreon community on MicroStrategy alone. And we have 3 decamillionaires. And there's probably a lot more right now. We're probably like 2,000 millionaires. So congrats to everybody. But Bernstein did say this a week ago. This is on my Okta 1 week ago. They said they urged investors to add exposure to Bitcoin now. We'll keep it simple. Don't fight this. And I describe this as the biggest punch in the face financial advice I've ever heard in my life. Get in now. Don't overthink it. Get in. Crazy. And Bitcoin. This is the 4-year compound annual growth rate return. Thank you as well, Sanjay, for this one. The worst return ever, CAGR, for 1 year for Bitcoin was a 24% compound annual growth rate. Currently, we're at 50%. We're going much higher. And the returns on Bitcoin so far this year are 150%. Again, don't overthink it. It's not hard. And despite, shout out to Thomas, despite the selling pressure, Bitcoin is up 150% year to date. Hundreds of thousands of coins were sold this year from GBTC unwind, Mt. Gox distribution, carry trade unwind, German government selling 50,000. That's the amount that Michael Saylor bought today, by the way. It's so scarce. The price is still up 150%, and the demand will be even stronger next year. But the problem is, now there's no supply. Price must go higher. Couldn't say it better myself. That's just the nature of the business. Now, there is a bit of sad news. Chamath was on the All-In Pod, and you could see the anguish on his face. And Chamath was on back in 2017, I was kind of tracking how much people had. I got this huge spreadsheet with all the, people that I could track of how much Bitcoin they had, all the OGs from back in the day. And I estimated that Chamath had 100,000 Bitcoin. Early buyer, circa 2013, if I'm not mistaken, 2014, 2015 maybe. But he sold, and his honesty was very refreshing. Again, I estimate he had 100,000 Bitcoin at one stage. And that bag today would be worth $92 billion. But then he said it's a $3 to $4 billion mistake because he actually had his shareholding with partners as well. And shareholders, it wasn't all of his bag. It was in a little fund. And he said, I shouldn't have sold it. So the point is, okay, when you have winners, hold them, let them ride. A lot of people as well that got out of MicroStrategy a little too early. Just look at the data. Look at the numbers, understand on-chain, look at the scarcity, and just watch the price go up. Just as Thomas said, too. Price must go higher. That should be a little gif. Anyway, shout out to Chamath, though. It was very refreshing for him to be so brutally blunt and honest, and sad to leave 3 or 4 billion on the table when I know his SPACs have gotten hammered over the past 3 years. So live and learn. Be in few assets, make sure they're winners. And a little bit of government news as well, because the government's always looking out for us. IRS is warning Americans that starting in 2025, they must report payments on Venmo, PayPal, and Zelle of over $600. Meanwhile, the Pentagon just failed its seventh audit in a row, and they're unable to account for 60% of the $4.1 trillion in assets, $824 billion annual budget. Just like Peanut, the government focuses on the wrong things. That needs to change fast. All these videos are turned into Substacks and podcasts, and you get all the slides, all the material, because I go really fast, so some people might miss a little piece of infinite money glitch that could be very important to your life. So there's a team behind me that does that. Thank you to the guys, Rob and Jack and Luke and everybody, making it happen every day. So we just try to cover costs with that. So if you want it, it's there. And hit the like and subscribe. Hope you enjoyed the show. It's a big one. This is crazy. I was going to check on the Bitcoin price, actually. Ew. Oh, my goodness. My MicroStrategy is at $386. It's nuts. Again, don't overthink it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you all for coming. Have a good night. Thank you to the mods in the chat, too. And let me catch up and see if I missed anything. Moto89, good to see you again, buddy. Have a good night, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye. Oh, DCA is tomorrow morning. 7:30 Pacific, 4:30 Central European time. Good night, everybody.